Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. So I was reflecting a little bit on the material that we're doing, and there's a lot of repetition. And this is almost like reading the stock exchange. There's a sense that the simple act of reading it, even though the content might not be as stimulating, let's say, as some of the regular narratives or some of the halachic material that we've been reading, nevertheless, that there is a certain mystical quality to the very fact that we are reciting these words, that we are saying these words, that we're showing respect for the Torah in uttering these words, even though we do it year after year, of course, publicly. And the fact that it's simply an organization without necessarily having, at least unless you start to try and really get down and deep into it, at least superficially, it doesn't seem to have a lot of content to it, other than the simple material and the numbers and things like that. As I said, what's interesting, of course, is that to someone who is not invested in the stock exchange, hearing stock exchange reports is about as boring as it comes. On the other hand, if you have an investment in the stock exchange, you find it very, very interesting and of very great concern. And likewise, in some ways, this is reflective. It gives us a measurement of how invested are we in all of this, in Torah itself, and these kinds of materials. And so it gives us a chance to look into our own minds and into our own hearts and say, wait a second, do I have the energy? Do I have the desire even to try and mine out of this as much as I can, even simply for the information that is there? So, okay. Let me double check something here. All right. So I am going to go ahead now into the screen share and find the place where we are. And this is where we left things off yesterday. So we were in the midst of outlining where the various tribes were in the relationship to the tabernacle. And I'm going to give you another picture just briefly. That's this one here. And we just read about Judah and Issachar and Zebulon. That's who we read about. And we're going to go in a clockwise direction, as you see, in outlining the various tribes that would be involved here. Notice, of course, that the Levites are in their own position, and the tribe of Joseph is basically divided into Ephraim and Manasseh. So it's not a simple accounting of this. And what's interesting is that I don't know if this is a Rashi we're going to come up with at some point, but it occurred to me that we don't have the Levites as part of this arrangement here, and we don't have Joseph included. He is represented by Ephraim and Manasseh. Now, Rashi tells us that the basis of this arrangement that we're looking at here was the way in which the tribes, that is the sons of Jacob, took Jacob from Egypt back to the land of Israel to bury him after he passed away. So in other words, we could sort of see this as saying that this area here is Jacob. Jacob represents our patriarch Jacob, and the bier, his coffin, and this is where the tribes were standing when they carried him. But wait a second, Levi is not included here, and nor is Joseph. So as I recollect, Jacob gave them specific instructions and saying that since Joseph was the head of the, had that position in Egypt of being second in Pharaoh, it was not appropriate for him to be carrying the buyer. And right now, at this very moment, there was another reason he gave as to why Levi would not, in fact, be there in that regard. And it's escaping me for this moment, forgive me, as to what the specific reason was. You should know that the word Levi, right, the name of that tribe, means to accompany him, to accompany. And the Jewish word, the Hebrew word for funeral is levaya, levaya, from this word Levi. So whether Levi had a specific task, but we can see these were the Levites, these were the families, or the three families of the Levites. And you can see how they accompanied the tabernacle, they accompanied the Kohanim in terms of what they did in their service to God as they performed their services. But it's interesting to keep that in mind, that the word Levi means to accompany. So we're going to go back into the text. I'm going to go back now into the text, see if I can go back there. Okay.
And it's Levies can go to funerals and cemeteries.
Yes, they can. They are not correct. They are not prevented from doing that. And now, okay, here we are. For some reason, this is tiny, and I don't know why. Okay, but it seems to come out okay. Correct. Only Kohanim have that responsibility. So Leviim, and of course Kohanim are a subset of the tribe of Levi. And maybe we'll come across that Rashi that I was referring to. And for some reason, I feel like we should have covered it, but I don't remember that we did. So maybe we'll come across it yet. But I know I read this. So here we go. We're going to go back to Tet, Kol HaPekudim Lemachane Yehuda, the entire enrollment for the camp of Judah, Me'at Elef, 100,000, Ushmonim Elef, and 80,000, V'Sheshet Alafim, and 6,000, V'Arba Me'ot, and 400, Letzivotam, according to their troops. Rishona Yisa'u, they shall journey first. And I took the time and the liberty to put this up here so you could just see the number. So let's take a look at what it says here. So Rishona Yisa'u, they should journey first. And Rashi describes how this happens. Keshero'in ha'anan mistalek, when they would see the cloud. Remember, they were led by a pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire by night. We had read this back in Parshat Beshalach, how Hashem sent an angel that took the form of a cloud or the fire to direct the Jewish people, the Israelites, in their wanderings. So when they would see that the cloud mistalek was dispersing, in other words, it would stay in one place, and now it was moving off to a different position. In HaKohanim b'chatzotzrot, the Kohanim would give a blast on the trumpets, the Nosea Machane Yehuda Tchila, and the camp of Judah would journey to begin with. And when they journeyed, holchin kederech chaniyatam, they would journey just as they had encamped. HaLeviim v'ha'agalot, the Levites and their carts, they used carts to carry some of the parts of the tabernacle, but emtza, so in the middle. Degel Yehuda b'mizrach, so the standard of Judah was on the east. V'shel Ruvain b'darom, and the standard of Reuben on the south. V'shel Ephraim Ma'arav, and on Ephraim it was on the west side, V'shel Dan Batzafon, and Dan on the north. So this is how Levi and Joseph were taken care of. Ephraim and Manasseh essentially took their place. So on to verse 10. So we have just dealt with Judah and Issachar and Zebulun, and now we go on to going in a clockwise direction. Degel Machane Reuven, the standard or the flag of the camp of Reuben, Teimana Letzivotam. They were south in the southerly direction according to their troops. The Nasi Livnei Reuven, and the chieftain of the children of Reuven, Elitzur ben Shdeur, Elitzur, son of Shdeur. So we're simply given this information. It's like we're making a list, and we're as we're sort of filling in the information so that it's all about organization, right? I believe organizing is basically tied to making lists. Utzva'o ufakudav, and his troops and their number, their enrollment, Shisha va'arba'im elef, 46 or 40,000, v'chamesh, it's going to be me'ot, and 500. There we are. V'hachonim alav, and camping next to him, Matei Shimon, the tribe of Shimon, the Nasi Livnei Shimon, and the chieftain of the sons or the children of Shimon, Shlumiel ben Surishadai. Shlumiel, the son of Surishadai. Again, we have the head of that tribe, Utzva'o ufkudehem, and his, notice the wording is identical. It's just a formula. We're reading through this formula. Utzva'o ufkudehem, and his troops according to their numbers, Tisha v'chamishim elef, 50,000, ushloshmaot, and 300. I believe you can see this. We'll get to the Rashi when we get to Yud Zayin. Umate Gad, and the tribe of Gad, V'nasi Livnei Gad, and the head of the tribe of Gad, the chieftain of the tribe of Gad, Eliasaph ben Reuel, Eliasaph, son of Reuel, Utzva'o ufkudehem, and his troops by their number, Chamisha va'arba'im elef, 40,000, v'shesh me'ot v'chamishim, 650. Kol ha'pekudim lemachane Reuven, all the those enrolled with the camp of Reuven, me'at elef, 100,000, ve'echad v'chamishim elef, and 51,000, v'arba'ma'ot v'chamishim, and 450, letzivotam, according to their troops, ushniim isa'u, and they shall journey second. So we have Reuven is the main camp here, and we've got Shimon and Gad that are accompanying him. V'nasa ohel moed machaneh haleviim, and now we read how the ohel moed, the encampment of the Levites, journeyed betoch hamachanot, in the midst of the encampment or the encampments. Ka'asher yachanu, as they encamped, kein yisa'u, so they journeyed. Ish al yado lediglehem, every person next to him or nearby, lediglehem, according to their standards. In other words, near their standards. They had these flags, and we read about them, and the colors of the flags corresponded to the colors of the stones on Aaron's breastplate. So we have all these associations, interestingly enough, with Jacob journeying back to the land of Canaan. So there is something interesting there about the Jewish people ultimately winding up in the land of Israel, Canaan, which subsequently became Israel. So there's some symbolism involved in that idea of something being transformed from one land to another land. Let's take a look at Rashi. V'nasa ohel moed, and the tent of meeting journeyed. La'achar shnei degalim halalu. So we read now, we understand that after these two, and he just represents the entire group, these 6 tribes, by the 2 standards. In other words, the standard of Judah and the standard of Reuven. Ka'asher yachanu ke'nisa'u. That's quoting the text. Just as they encamped, so they journeyed. Kamoshe pirashti, just as Rashi saying, just as I've explained, halichatam kachaniatam. Their journey was the same way as their encampment. Kol degel ma'alach, each standard, in other words, that encampment of those 3 tribes, right? Each standard mahalach in a distance, l'ruach hakfu'ah lo, in the direction which had been established for it. So in other words, right, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun were on the east, and Reuven and Shimon and Gad were on the south, etc. Al yado. So Rashi's explaining this term al yado, ish al yado, each man al yado, next to, literally it means at his hand. Maybe on hand, although that has more to do with time than it has to do with location. And here we're talking about location. So he says, al yado means al makomo. It means, Rashi says, in his place. So we should translate al yado meaning in place. The ein lashon yad, and Rashi says that the literal meaning of this word, hand, zaz, we don't have to remove it, mimashma'o, from its basic meaning. Ruach shel tzido, the direction of its side, karui al yado, okay, is termed al yado, by this phrase al yado, hasmucha lo, in other words, next to him. Al yado hasmucha lo. So I'm going to understand that, right, is considered close, mucha would be close to where he is. L'chol poshatat yado. In other words, al yado can be, we're talking about the place when you stretch out your hand. When you stretch out your hand, that area that's covered by your outstretched hand would be al yado, by your hand. So we can still understand this word yad, hand, in quite a literary sense, as referring to the place that is right next to you. And he gives the French ensemble I suppose, and it's in Yiddish im zur Zeit. So it means his Zaita, his side. Im means his. In other words, his zur Zeit. I think the zur here would mean to. So to his side. Going on. Degel, so now we go on to the next group. Degel Machane Ephraim, the standard of the camp of Ephraim, the Tzivotam Yama, according to their troops towards the sea. It means literally towards the sea. So it's the west side, because the Mediterranean Sea, if you think about it, is on the west of the land of Israel. So V'nasi livnei Ephraim, and the chieftain of the children of Ephraim, Elishama ben Amihud was his name. Utzvoa, again, back to this formula, Utzvoa ufkudehem, and his troops, according to their enrollment, Arba'im Elef, 40,000, V'chamesh me'ot, and 500. For Alav Mate Menashe, And next to him, next to Ephraim, was the tribe of Menashe, the Nasi Livnei Menashe, and the chieftain of the children of Menashe, Gamliel ben Pedahzur. His name was Gamliel ben Pedahzur. So let's take a look here. V'alav, and upon him literally, but it says Ketargumo, just as the Targum understands it, Udas Michin Alohi, meaning next to him, near next to him. And you saw the picture that we had. Getting in here, V'tzva'o ufkulehem, and his troops and their enrollment, Shnaim ushloshim elef, 230,000, umatayim, and 200. Umatay Benyamin, and the tribe of Benjamin, V'nasi livnei Benyamin, and the chieftain of the tribe of the children of Benjamin, Avidan ben Gidoni, that was his name. Utzva'al ufkudehem, and his troops and their enrollment, their numbers, Chamisha, 5, Ushloshim elef, and 30,000, V'arba me'ot, and 400. Kol hapakodim lemachane Ephraim. So now we've got all three of this group listed together. All those enrolled for the camp of Ephraim, me'at elef, 100,000, ushmonat alafim, and 8,000, ume'ah, and 100. Letzivotam, according to their troops, ushlishim yisa'u, and they would journey third. And finally, the fourth group, right? Degel Machane Dan, and the standard of the tribe of Dan, Tzafona Letzivotam, is on the north side towards the north, according to their troops. V'nasi Livnei Dan, and the chieftain of the tribe of Dan, or the sons of Dan, Achiezer ben Amishadai, Utzva'o ufkudehem, and his troops and their numbers, the enrollment, Shnaim v'shishim elef, 260,000, Ushva ma'ot, and 700, quite large. V'hachonim alav, and those encamped next to him, Matei Asher, the tribe of Asher, V'nasi livnei Asher, and the chieftain of the children of Asher, Pagiel ben Ochran. His name was Pagiel ben Ochran. Utzva'o ufkudehem, and his troops, according to their number, Echad v'arba'im elef, 140,000, v'chamesh me'ot, and 500. Umatei Naphtali, and finally the tribe of Naphtali, V'nasi livnei Naphtali, and the chieftain of the sons of Naphtali, Achira ben Einan. His name was Achira ben Einan. Utzva'o ufkudehem, and his troops and their number, according to the enrollment, Shlosha v'chamishim elef, 350,000, v'arba me'ot, and 400. Kol hapakodim lemachane Dan, and all those enrolled under the tribe of Dan, me'at elef, 100,000, v'shiva v'chamishim elef, and 750,000, v'shesh ma'ot, and 600. La'acharona yisa'u, and they journeyed at the very end, Lediglahem, according to their standards. Excuse me. So we've just gotten through all this listing of the tribes, and I will put the marking in here. And we'll start with a new paragraph, and we'll see what the results are of the census that they took. So there. I'm going to stop the share and inquire if anyone has any comments. I mean, it's, at least as we run it through, it is fairly straight going. I'll tell you what, I will one more time share that picture of how it all looks out, how it all looked. Give me one moment. Here we are. And there. So.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a comment, Rabbi.
Sure.
Reuben was the firstborn. Why wasn't his troop first over the other troop, Judah?
Yes, very, very good question. So, Harlan, we read about this in the book of Genesis. And Genesis raises the issue of position of birth as opposed to character. And character wins out. That's, in a way, one of the subtexts of Genesis, is that while your position in birth may make you privileged, what truly gives you status is your character. And Judah's character, while at least at some point somewhat checkered, he turns out to be an incredibly noble individual. He is willing, he makes a promise to Jacob, his father, that he will be personally responsible for Benjamin, who's Joseph's full brother. And when Joseph wants to test the brothers one more time, Judah comes to Joseph and says, "Take me instead." That's one example. The other example, also in the middle of the story of Joseph, is when Tamar becomes pregnant through Judah, and he doesn't realize he's the father of that child. And Tamar simply says, "I'm pregnant by the person who owns the staff and the signet." Judah says, "She's more righteous than I am." So we see elements, I mean, truly his example where he is willing to put his life ahead of, put Benjamin's life ahead of his own, is a true mark of leadership and kingship. We've seen, I believe, just the opposite lately in the news. And of course, it takes a lot of courage. Courage doesn't come cheaply. And because Judah shows this remarkable courage, he is ultimately, of course, David, king. The dynasty of David comes from Judah. So
I was thinking that,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I was thinking that Reuben did something with the concubine of Jacob, and it was and Jacob didn't like it. So I don't know.
True. And if anything, it shows Reuben having, and again, Reuben was trying to protect the honor of his own mother. Leah was Reuben's mother, and when Jacob took Bilhah, who was the concubine, who was Rachel's concubine, Reuben felt that his mother's honor, she was being dishonored. But the trouble, and Reuben again tried to save Joseph, but he was ineffective in the choices he made, and ineffective as a leader subsequently, or considered ineffective. In fact, the tribe of Reuben, I'm not sure. Okay, no, never mind. It's okay. It retains its identity, but of course, he's one of the northern tribes, and those northern tribes, the only tribes that retained any identity at all were the tribe of Judah and Benjamin in the course of history. And of course, Benjamin, we know, was Joseph's full brother, and yet it turns out that Benjamin's loyalty ultimately goes to Judah. Interesting. So again, character is thicker than blood. So, and we'll stop here with this.
One more question is, they were supposed to conquer the Canaanites. How close were they at this time in the wilderness? Where were they? What border was that? I can't figure out what border they were supposed to do.
Okay, so at this point,
the distance,
at this point, I believe they're ready to leave the area around Mount Sinai. I'm not absolutely certain. It has
Is it the Phoenicians or Venetian area, or
no. They're down in the wilderness they're in the Sinai Peninsula. They're on their way from Egypt. If you can imagine the map of the Mediterranean corner, the Levant, that they're down there, and they're maybe, I don't know, a month away, couple of months away, whatever. And we will be reading up to the point of Shlach, the Parsha of Shlach, where Moses sends spies to reconnoiter the land. And it's at that point that they're essentially ready to enter the land of Israel, or the land of Canaan at the time. And of course, they come back, and we have this tragic story regarding the spies, at which point another 40.
That's what I want to ask you, Rabbi. Why, if they saw all the miracles of the sea and everything, and they were slaves, and they saw all these miracles, and they crossed over, and God helped them to get out of Egypt, why didn't they trust God?
Okay, Harlan.
I don't understand that.
Okay, Harlan, the reason is it's a comment on human nature, because the truth is we see miracles every day. Just the fact that our bodies are capable of functioning, we see the miracles of nature, we see the miracles of technology that the human mind is capable of, that we have been given these particular gifts. And the fact is that so many people don't believe in God at all. And it has to do, again, with where your heart is and your training and other kinds of things. But human nature is, what have you done for me lately? That is, unless we master ourselves and think carefully, we don't tend to do that. And it's important, I think, for us to just understand the Torah is describing human nature, and we need to look at ourselves. I feel at this point, it's not for me to correct everybody else or to have engage in these critiques of humanity. I have to take these lessons that the Torah is throwing in my face and say, wait a second, to what degree do I have an attitude of what have you done for me lately? To what degree do I nurture appreciation so that I never forget the miracles that happen daily to me, even small ones. So I think that the Torah is actually making that point. So your question is a wonderful question, but the truth is it's describing human nature, which has not changed over the course of millennia. And I need to stop the recording with this. So thanks for asking that question and bringing it up.